And I'm going to start webinar now.
Okay, great. Welcome, everyone. We are completing the first session, session 1 of our UHS college webinar series here tonight. We have three different components to tonight. We are going to have making the most of a college visit, components of a college application process, and we're also going to have towards the end the highly selective college admissions. Each of these different sessions, again, we're going to kind of have a little bit more of a laid back format here with our college reps that showed up for us here tonight. Essentially, they'll do a little bit of a presentation on the particular topic. We have the chat at the bottom that you can see on your screen through our Zoom here. You'll be able to enter questions into the chat. They will not be public. The chat will then go to some of our counselors behind the scenes that are filtering some of the questions. And when we get to that point of the presentation, we will be able to, at that point, we'll be able to ask some questions to the college reps. So throughout the presentations tonight, like I said, feel free to ask questions at any point, and we'll start to filter them in and see if we can touch on some of the topics with the college reps. This will be, I'm sorry, you're going to, you may see at the bottom, you may have to use the questions through the question and answer, okay? I want to let everyone know this is recorded for tonight, so if you cannot stick around for the whole thing, like we said, we're trying to have somewhere around, essentially somewhere around maybe 20 minutes to a half an hour for each rep and their portion of the presentation, okay? First and foremost, I would like to thank our reps for being here tonight and making this possible. Okay, we have Grace Marchene, sorry, Grace. We have Jeremy Branch, and we're also going to have Rachel Schlachter. I'm not going to take up too much of their time as far as their background. You know, I know some of them want to kind of present on some of their experiences and their background for each topic. As we're going through tonight, again, I just want to also remind everyone, I'm Mr. Findor. I'm Bob Findor, one of the school counselors at Unionville High School. I also have Mrs. Miller, Mrs. Colleen Miller, and Mrs. Laura Elfrith helping behind the scenes in the chat. I'd like to give a big thank you to Justin Webb, who's our technology guru, who's behind the scenes right now, making sure all of this works. And I'd also like to give a big thanks to the rest of the counselors. You know, Mrs. Lyles, you know, our department chair here has chimed in a lot and contributed a lot to making tonight happen also. At the end of the session, one last point before we get started. At the end of the session, we're also going to have a feedback form that we'll be sending out. And at certain points throughout the presentation, we'll see if we can put the feedback form in the chat. And so we can receive some feedback from the community here, from our students to see what we can do to potentially improve some of these sessions, because we're looking to also have a second session and a third session moving ahead in the school year, okay? So I think we should get things started here, all right? So I think we're going to start here with Grace, and our first topic for tonight is making the most of a college visit. And Grace, I know, you know, that during pandemic times, I'm sure, you know, for your school, and you can talk a little bit about your background, I'm sure things have changed a lot with that subject, so.
They have. Yeah, they certainly have. And I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about both in-person visits and, you know, we can kind of all pretend that everything's normal and that we're only stuck in our houses because of the snow outside. And then I will also, though, talk about virtual opportunities and, you know, really focus on like what's out there and why should you take advantage of those opportunities, right? Like why is it important to visit a college? What can you get out of it? Sure. So I figure, just as a quick introduction for me, my name is Grace Marchene. I'm an assistant director of admissions at Lafayette College. This is now my 6th year in the admissions office. And you can add another 4 to that for how many years I was a student at Lafayette. So it is a place that I know very well. In fact, the poster over here is like actually from a football game that I got when I was a student, and I've just taped it to my wall to kind of decorate a little bit, make it a
Sure.
little bit more festive in here. And I think that love for the college is a lot of the reason why I am now in admissions and able to talk with students and kind of help them imagine having an opportunity similar to the one that I had and an experience similar to the one that I had.
Yep.
I was a tour guide. I did interviews as a student, the whole deal.
Well, Grace, you have a wonderful background for our community tonight. All the different aspects of what you've what you've been through as far as your professional background. So I appreciate you sharing with us tonight. Thank you.
Sure. So I figured I'd start off just by kind of breaking down a little bit what we mean and what might be included when we talk about a college visit, because honestly, there are a ton of ways to engage with the college, to better get to know them. It just really, it takes a little bit of research just to kind of see what's out there. So I'm going to go through some basics. I want to put this out. I don't think this is an exhaustive list. I think there's plenty more going on, especially once you get into April and you see all the opportunities for accepted students and, everything that happens kind of later in your senior year. It's just absolutely going to explode. But for these purposes, let's kind of think about, all right, we're just trying to get to know a college. How can we do that? So simple. I think the first one to start with is a tour, but even that can kind of take a couple different forms. So say it's on campus, it's in person. Is it guided? Like, is there a tour guide with you? Perhaps a student who's gonna, walk you around. What are they showing you? Where are they headed? Are there multiple campuses and you're seeing different areas? Is there only one campus that you're going to be able to see? Thinking about it, for now while we're in, the pandemic and there's all different, rules and regulations that we want to adhere to just to keep everybody safe.
Sure.
Are you going to be able to get into buildings or maybe not? Just be aware that may vary a little bit, especially right now for different campuses, whether or not you're going to be able to get into a building, even if it is a guided tour.
Sure.
It might also be a self-guided tour, though. It might be you walking around, kind of checking things out on your own. And now a lot of colleges will have some resources for you to kind of even guide you along, a little bit, just so you're not like wandering. You have no idea what you're looking at. Usually, at least buildings will have signs and tell you, at least what the name of the building is.
Yep.
Sometimes the name of the building tells you what goes on there, like in an engineering center. might be a clue. So that's helpful certainly, but there should be some guidance from the admissions office that they'll leave either on their website or maybe actually printed that you can pick up perhaps in an entryway in the admissions office that you can get into. That might at least tell you, okay, where's the library? Like, that's an important spot to hit if you're going to go onto a campus and just walk around on your own.
Yep.
Chances are you're going to be spending a lot of time there. So hopefully you like that library, right?
Yep.
Where's the student center? Where are you going to be eating? Like that's another important thing. Where are all the residence halls? Are they all in one area of the campus? Are they spread out? Is, there a freshman area? Like, what's going on there?
Sure.
It's also possible, especially right now, there might be driving tours available for you where actually it'll be maybe like an audio component that you're able to bring up either through Spotify or through, all sorts of different platforms and listen to it as you kind of drive through campus. And they'll kind of give you a route kind of follow to get a sense of, okay, like where are we headed? Some college campuses are very open and don't really have like a gate or anything. So you can, maybe drive right on in a neighborhood, whereas others may have, more gates and it may be set up a little bit differently. So my recommendation is always to check out the website, see what's going on, see what colleges are offering in terms of guided tours, self-guided tours, driving tours, you name it. See what they might be able to help you with, just in case. And that way, when you're actually on the campus, you've kind of got a little bit of a sense of direction where you want to go.
Okay.
Now, there's also the virtual side to this. Of course, there's virtual tours. A lot of colleges use vendors, and you may actually be quite familiar with some of them. And they'll have like a little guide that'll pop up on the side, and they'll tell you all about it, and they'll kind of go through. Utilize those. I think those are especially really helpful if you are planning to go to a college in person, and that you're going to be going around on a self-guided tour. Do the virtual tour first. have an idea of what you're going to be able to see. And then when you see it in person, you've kind of got, a little bit more of context, and you know what you're expecting. You know what the greatest hits are, like that student center, like that library. Check out, okay, if you're thinking about majoring in biology, know where biology happens. Like, what classroom and what academic building, is that going to be in? And I don't know, how close is it to the nearest dining hall, if that's what matters to you? And it kind of thinks about those questions.
Yeah.
There's also opportunities for some colleges to do a virtual tour live on their website too. So even through that, it'll probably be with a tour guide and a current student, and you'll be able to kind of get their story and get those anecdotes and that personal feel that you get from a guided tour on campus, and kind of recreate that online. So remember, those opportunities are out there.
Okay. Great.
Another great way, and I think another really great kind of starting point, and where I think a lot of students really do kind of start gathering information about a college, is an info session. Simple. Yep. Old school. It might have a presentation where an admissions director like myself is talking through facts about the college. There might be a student. They might not have a presentation and just be talking. So, be prepared. There might be some different ones and some different formats that colleges will use. But I think that's a really, really great way to get to know better especially the programs, academic programs, athletic programs, the things that are going on a college campus that you can't maybe get a great sense of just by looking at the campus on the tour. And obviously, certainly the tour guide will be able to tell you about some of that stuff. But, if a college or university is a little bit larger and has separate colleges, and they want to go through for you how you go about applying to specific programs, I think especially the application process and perhaps the financial aid process as well, that's the information you're going to get out of that information session. And I think why that information session can be very helpful to you. It's probably, in some cases live, but not always if it is a virtual information session. So keep in mind, again, in-person options and virtual options. My guess is, at least for Lafayette, all of our information sessions are virtual right now, but if we can put ourselves back and imagine that we can get out, you can also do in-person ones. But it's a great opportunity to ask questions, or it can also be really flexible. We have an on-demand info session, so you can bring that up and go through and view that whenever you want. Personally, I'm not going to go on and give you an information session on, like 9 o'clock at night on a Friday night. But if that's the time that you have, that's when you should go view our on-demand info session, and that'll work just perfectly. And then you can email me afterwards and tell me all about how much you liked it. And, that can kind of be the start of our relationship. And fantastic. So glad you started with that.
That's great. That's great.
All right, a couple other ways that that you can also get to know a school and really kind of get to know more of the community. Certainly panels, and keep in mind, panels can come in a lot of forms. They can be virtual, they can be in person, they can have students, they can have staff from the college, maybe people within student life and academic services who can kind of give you a sense of that side of the campus and that side of student life and campus life. There might be professors on a panel. There might be alumni on a panel. There's a lot of people out there who are able to tell you more about college. Classes, in person and virtual. Absolutely awesome ways to get to know a college. And then I finally wanted to finish up talking a little bit about interviews as well. And this is another thing where I think doing your research is important. Kind of getting to know a college. Do they offer interviews? Do they recommend them? Do they highly recommend them? That's something that's really important for you to get a sense of in terms of their application process and how it's going to work. Obviously in-person and virtual options here, but also there are going to be interviews out there that are just informative, and it's not actually going to have any impact on the application process, but it's an opportunity for you to speak with someone and maybe get your questions answered in a one-on-one setting. But there's also institutions, and Lafayette's one of them, where the interview is also evaluative. And we, really take advantage of this opportunity that we have to sit down with you, in this case, again, virtually over a computer, but, and get to know you a little bit, learn more about what makes you you. I think it's so much more personal than what the kind of what the activities page and the different pieces of the common application, yeah, sure, they're great, but there's not a ton that really equates to being able to talk with you in person. So those are absolutely excellent opportunities for us as an institution, but again, also for you to be able to sit down one-on-one with a member of our community and get to know us.
That's great.
So that's kind of my basics in terms of just what makes up a college visit. What should you be expecting? What should you maybe be looking out for or thinking about in terms of ways to get to know a college? Other quick questions to consider as you're looking into those options, and questions that hopefully you're answering for yourself when you're doing these visits, when you're doing the virtual tour and in-person tours. Where is this place? Like, where is this college? Is it nearby? Sure. Is it far away? Is it in a city? Or is there like a set campus? Is there a gate to that campus? Some, colleges and universities that happen to be in a city, it may not be completely clear where the college ends and the city begins, right? It might, just flow right there. And some students love that. Some students want that campus feel and want it to feel like I am on a college campus. So something to think about there. Are you in a suburb? Are you, way out in a rural area where the college is the kind of the main thing going on in that area? Just things to think about. Is the campus small? Is it big? Are there multiple campuses? Might you have to take a bus to class? It could happen on some colleges, at least. Yeah. Others, you can, get up out of your bed and roll out of class and, 5 minutes before it starts and you'll be fine. And that's also okay if that's what you want. So just things to think about. And, just to wrap this up, I did want to bring up the topic of demonstrated interest as well, because I think the college visit is so valuable to you as you want to learn about colleges. But it's also valuable to the colleges as we kind of get a sense of, your thoughts on us as well. Especially for a highly selective institution like Lafayette, we're going to get, so many more applications from qualified students than we can actually accept. And so that's where, really seeing a student who maybe has been to campus and done 5 million different, online virtual sessions and has done an interview with us, it's harder to say no to that student. But it also comes back to, like, we want students on our campus who love us back, right? And who want to be on our campus. And if you are kind of showing that love, and I think it helps you get to know a college and maybe love them even more by doing those many visits. So something to think about. So I wanted to throw that out there as well. I'm hoping I covered everything, but also didn't take up too much time.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And Grace, the questions I had, a few that came into the question and answer, you already answered in your presentation. So that's wonderful. One point, just kind of on the other side of things here on the other side of the fence, working with a lot of the high school students and their families and the community. You touched on it perfect. And I'm not going to set off a big battle here between you and Jeremy from Penn State over there. But the reality is, a lot of students feel a little bit defeated. They say, well, we can't get on the campuses. We can't, with the pandemic, and they start to feel like there's no way they could get a feel for the school. And the way you described the different variety and plethora of options that they have through a virtual format, I jokingly say to a lot of families, a lot of schools are in competition with each other. They're pulling out the big guns of, hey, you even have department chair for professors presenting sessions about their different departments where you might not have had that in the past. And another thing, talking with a lot of the college reps that we work with at Unionville High School, I've also noted there's a little bit of the aspect of, both you and Jeremy, you spend so much time on the road in years past prior to the pandemic. The fact that we now have so much capability through video conferencing, it allows more time for you to meet face-to-face with the students. So just like you said, I always encourage our students to reach out to the reps and try to set something up. If it's a small question here or there, get involved with the info sessions, the webinars. I mean, there's a number of different aspects. And Grace, I think you said it perfectly at the end. It doesn't go unnoticed. I always tell them, the college universities, they're tracking who's involved and who's interested and who's attending these different sessions. Because it helps. It does help in the end. Every little bit helps when it comes to the applications. I guess one of the questions I have for you, Grace, like I said, you covered a lot here, so I don't only have really one for you here. We commonly get a question, and Lafayette's a little bit more local to us over in Chester County at Unionville High School, but we get this question a lot. Maybe you can help with it. You touched on a little bit. Do you really have to visit the school before you're accepted? Right. And can you apply and go through the application process and then potentially visit later, or does that work against you? And what does that even look like, especially, for maybe Grace, for some of your students that are coming from out of state or from across the country even?
Sure. For students who are within, an hour, 2 hours or so, I do recommend a visit if you can. And especially this year, I totally understand that's not always, possible. But keep in mind, and I think, you even said colleges are able to offer more than they have in the past. I think that's absolutely true that, with these online platforms, we have been able to offer more. Our director of engineering has been able to literally do more specific sessions on engineering at Lafayette to walk through the whole process and walk through this is what your first year is going to look like. And that's been, absolutely amazing that he's had that platform, and we've really been able to cover a lot. So I do recommend, for us, especially small, highly selective, small campuses, liberal arts colleges. I do think the visit, and it doesn't have to be a ton, but some kind of engagement with us. I think it goes a long way, and it tells us that you've got a sense of who we are, and that you're being intentional about your college list. The one thing I will add to that, just because we do offer merit scholarships, but they do tend to be highly selective, and I always highly recommend an interview. But if students are thinking about merit scholarships and are looking for those, my advice to interview just goes through the roof. I really do, recommend it, since demonstrated interest is a big part of those merit scholarships. So, I wanted to bring that up in case, you've got students who are kind of thinking about that. An interview is going to go a long way in terms of your interest in us, but also our ability to get to know you in that way.
Okay, great. All right. Well, Grace, we have one more question here in our chat that's coming through the Q&A. So you mentioned the different type of events. You mentioned the different sessions, webinars. Sometimes it's pretty straightforward depending upon the university, but in general, from what you've seen with your colleagues and even at Lafayette, where should students look for these type of college events? Should they be checking the admissions page regularly? What does that look like? And so fill us in on that a little bit, Grace.
Yeah, definitely check the admissions page. I know we've actually, because we have so much going on, we actually have separate pages for virtual stuff and then for on-campus stuff at this point. So there's a lot of offerings, and we update it regularly. So, right now I think at the top is our President's Day open house, which is going to be virtual and coming up, this month. It's February now. So yes, there's quite a bit on our website. We try to update our social media with information about, different events going on campus as well, especially with, big open houses, or all through the fall, we had all sorts of professors in different departments talking about their programs. So, that was often up on our social media, and students could get a sense from there. And the nice thing too about the virtual space is you could literally learn about an opportunity going on that afternoon and sign up right there. There's not really like a sense of planning and if we're gonna go visit Lafayette, we gotta find a Saturday, we're gonna all pile in the car and head up, and where are we gonna get lunch? You don't really have to worry about it as much. So yes, definitely on school websites, probably the best way, but there's social media and everything out there too that we do our best to update.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, Grace, that was a wonderful presentation, and I appreciate it. And on behalf of our school and the community here, that was very thorough. And speaking about college visits, I answer questions about college visits all the time. And, with how fast things are changing, it's nice to stay updated. So I appreciate you presenting. Grace, you're welcome to stick around. I'm kind of transitioning here to picking on Mr. Branch over there. If you are able to stick around, some of the questions that are coming in, are not exactly directly to this topic. So we will answer questions that come in to the question and answer towards the end if we have something that we didn't necessarily touch on with our different topics here. So Mr. Jeremy Branch from Penn State University, right? I'll let you do your deal here. The components of a college application process, right? And that's what we're looking to have you present on here tonight. And again, for those of you that may have entered the webinar here a little bit later, since we've started, just a reminder to everyone, we are recording this. We will also post this on the Counseling Center website, and you can ask questions in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen here. The questions come in. We have counselors working kind of behind the scenes to work on some of the questions. Our college reps are going to present for a little bit, and then we start firing questions at them and put them on the hot seat a little bit after their presentation. So that's kind of how we're running here. Again, thank you, Grace, and Jeremy, if you want to kick things off here. Thank you for coming tonight.
Oh, thanks for having me, Grace. Excellent job. Excellent job. Loved hearing her, pieces of advice about searching through colleges and doing your whole piece virtually this year, right? Because that's a really new component of the college search journey that you're all going on. And I was really happy to see that the Unionville counseling staff and all their wisdom separated this really from my topic, because a lot of times when you think about your college search journey, your college visitation is a key part of that, but it deserves so much of its own attention because it is a different beast this year. So I'm glad that Grace got to share some wisdom with you there. My name is Jeremy Branch. I am the Senior Assistant Director of Enrollment Management at Penn State University, a Penn State graduate as well, with a degree in communications, which I hope proves itself to be a good thing as our time goes along today. I am also, outside of Penn State, the president of the Pennsylvania Association for College Admission Counseling, which is an organization that all of your school counselors are a part of as well. So it's one of the places where I get to spend a lot of time with them outside of our normal day-to-day with Penn State applications. But you'll notice when it comes to this segment of our program tonight that I've been referring to what you're going through as a journey. A lot of people, when they talk about what you're embarking on right now, they usually call it a process, the college search process, the college application process. I don't love that term. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but when I think of a process, I think of something that is arduous, that's not enjoyable. If you've ever broken a bone or sprained something or fractured something really bad, that rehab that you go through, that's a process. Doctor's visit after doctor's visit, scan after scan, rehab, working it out, physical therapy, and all of that effort just to get back to square one, where you were before. Mm-hmm. But when I think about your college search and your college application, it's more of a journey. There are ups and downs, ebbs and flows. You may think back to when we were able to travel a little bit more freely, when you and your family were getting ready to go on a vacation. Wasn't that something that had highs and lows? You might think of before your visit starts, right? And you're packing to figure out what you're going to take, especially the ladies in the room. You know, you could spend weeks trying to figure out what you're putting in that suitcase, right? What outfit goes with which, what pairs of shoes. Now, I have similar conversations as well, right? Because I overpack for everything, but that's an excitement. That's a high. Then when you're trying to figure out what time you have to leave the house to get to the airport, or how you're going to shove all these kids in the back seat of your caravan, right? That's a little bit of a downward part of your journey. But all of this comes together and hopefully has you reach that destination, which will be oh so sweet. And that's the same thing that's going to happen with this college search journey that you're on. There's going to be highs, there's going to be lows. There are going to be good days where maybe Lafayette is your number one school and you engage with Grace and you had a great interview and you feel like, you know what, I really put my best foot forward. There are going to be down days where you get that thin packet in the mail, which is usually a denial letter, right? And you thought you were shooing. You looked at your scattergrams and you compared yourself to some of your upperclassmen friends, and it just didn't work out this year. But hopefully, as you follow the advice that I give you tonight, as well as Grace and our other colleague who will be on later, you'll have a better journey than you would have without our advice. Now, when it comes to your application journey, it actually doesn't start with your actual application. That's a common mistake. When people think about this normally, they say, okay, where am I going to apply? Where's my list of schools? We've got to take a couple steps back before we even get there. I like families to start their college application journey with actually a conversation as to why they're getting ready to do this in the first place. See, oftentimes we get caught up in the things associated with this that don't really matter. See, this isn't about who got in or gets into the most selective school. This is not about what your family thinks, your neighbor, or even your friends at Unionville. It's not about that. It's not about that bumper sticker that you hope to put on the car. Now, I'm sure some of you in your neighborhoods last May or June, I'm sure you could tell me just by driving past the different driveways on your street, which senior got into which school. And it wasn't because they were out in the driveway shouting out at the top of their lungs, I got into Penn State or I got into Westchester. That's not how you knew. You knew by what magnet was on mom's SUV, right? You knew by what flag was flopping off outside of the porch, right? That was how you knew. And although those are great moments, right? I'm not a hypocrite. On my car right outside of where I am right now, I've got my Penn State magnet on it, right? That's a big piece. That's a celebratory piece. And I'm not shaming or judging. However, you should not be going into your college application journey with that at the forefront of your mind. It's not about that. It's not just about where you get in. It's about where you can succeed. That needs to be at the forefront of your mind before you even start filling out your first application. We as an American society put so much emphasis on the getting in. And you students, you know this, you hear the conversations around the Unionville community. You hear it on social media. You see what your upperclassmen friends have been posting, right? But that's not what this is about. What about finishing? See, when you look at graduation rates, as you start to dig a little bit deeper into the different colleges and universities you're thinking about applying to, you're going to notice that there are some schools that really don't have a fantastic graduation rate or retention rate. And you might be wondering why that is. Well, okay, 70% isn't abysmal. The national average is around 60%, right? So what is that? What do we charge that to? Like, what is the reason for that? It's not because that school necessarily admitted students who weren't qualified. That's not it. Oftentimes it's that the student entered with the wrong idea of what this was. I have a lot of incoming freshmen that come into my university and they don't have goal the first, because their last goal that they had set for themselves in regards to college was just getting in. Okay, now you've accomplished that. Now what?
Yep.
And when it comes to finishing, right, there's a lot that goes into that. You have to find the right fit in order to matriculate, in order to finish, in order to graduate from that university. Well, how do you go about doing that? And what does fit entail? I'm sure you've heard your counselor use that term, right? Because our Unionville counselors, they're up on it. They're some of the best in all the nation, right? So they use these terms that are often associated and spoken about often when it comes to college, right? And college going and applications and things of that nature. And people like me, Grace probably used it. I'm going to use it, so on and so forth. And it's really because it's the perfect word to encapsulate what you're looking for. Right now, when it comes to fit, there are three key areas, students and parents, I want you to hone in on. I want you to hone in on the social fit, the academic fit, and the financial fit. What is the social fit? Well, basically, when you go there, do they have clubs and organizations that you like? One of my favorite things about Unionville students, you are very involved in your school community. Now, that's been curtailed a little bit as we've been dealing with the pandemic.
Sure.
But, even said, right, I know when I get your applications next year, I'm going to have a list of different things that you were involved in. And when it comes to what you would have still been involved in, I want you to put that on your application too. Right. That's a key piece. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more as we go ahead, because I know it's at the forefront of many of your minds. Right. But when it comes to fit from a social standpoint, do you see students who look like you? Right. For some of us, that's a really big deal. Right. So from some of us, maybe from diverse communities, we want to walk into a campus that also has a diverse community. Or maybe you just want, you're a guy and you want guys that are into the same types of stuff, or you're a woman and you want women in engineering mentoring programs, right? And you want a concentration of other women who are into the STEM fields. So from a social standpoint, are the schools that you're looking at ones that offer that to you? It also, this is where you'll start to really think about size of an institution. Now, many of us, when we start thinking about colleges and our college search, in our mind's eye, oftentimes we envision larger universities, right? And a guy like me, I love that because I work for a larger university. So keep it up, right? But that's because oftentimes when you think about your favorite movie, your favorite television show, right? Oftentimes if there's a college scene depicted in that movie or television show, is it at a small liberal arts college? Typically, no. It's usually at a very big college and university. If you're a fan like me of sports, I love every sport, okay? I don't care what it is. I don't care what division it is, right? If they televise two kids playing wiffle ball in their backyard tomorrow, I'm going to watch it, okay? I love it, right? So when you watch the NCAA tournament or college football, a lot of times those schools that are up for national championships, they're larger universities that those students are representing, right? So we automatically fall in love with it. But as you start to do some of these virtual tours like Grace talked about, or maybe you're fortunate enough to get an in-person tour at a school, you're going to start to realize that size might not be what you thought it would be, right? Some of the campuses that you're going to start to feel more and more comfortable at, they might not be the large state affiliated school like you anticipated. Or some of you who thought maybe small liberal arts is where you wanted to go, maybe it winds up being this big institution, right? Because you love that energy. Well, this is part of that social fit that you're trying to find. The academic fit is also a really important part of your college application journey. Well, why is that? Well, let's say Princeton came to you tomorrow and they said, you know what, John Doe, we're going to offer you not only admission into next year's class, but we're going to give you a full ride, right? Do you go to Princeton if they offer that to you? Now, you may be looking at me and saying, who is this idiot? Right? Like, of course you would go, right? But let's take a second to think about this. Mm-hmm. What if I'm a B- student at Unionville? I'm really good in English. I love it. I'm solid with history and social studies. Not really a science guy. Definitely not a math guy, right? When I walk onto Princeton's campus, how's that going to work for me? When most of those students who are also sitting in classes with me are straight A students. They've never had a B, right? They took exams and they scored close to 1,600 on their SATs. They're used to being the valedictorian in every school, in every class that they enrolled in their high school. So if I'm a B- kid and I've been, enveloped at Unionville, they never marginalized me there. They always accepted me for the student I was and wanted to help me along in the best way for me. Do you see where Princeton could become a challenge, right? We have to make sure that our own academic capabilities, our academic curiosity, our intellectual capacity, we have to make sure that matches up with the college or university that we attend. Right? There's an oftentimes a saying that goes along with this: don't outkick your coverage. And for many of us, right, who are football fans, we know exactly what that problem is. You may have the best punter in all of the NFL or in all of college football, but if he boots the ball so far that his coverage can't get underneath it to tackle the other team who's going to be receiving the ball, it becomes a problem. Right? Because that guy's already up the field gaining 20 or 30 yards before the first defender gets in his vicinity, right? So the same thing can be a problem academically with the schools that you're putting on your list. If you're out kicking your coverage everywhere, you're a solid B student or even a solid A student, but the schools that you're applying for are all where straight A students are going to be in classes with you, or maybe you're shooting a little bit too low for where you would be happy, right? Academic fit is a key component. If you're a student who has learning differences, are those accommodations available at that school? Now, I know in a couple of weeks, you're going to have another presentation about that. That's going to flesh that topic out a little bit more, but that goes into academic fit. We are not held to the same requirements that your school district is when it comes to this. One size does not fit all with colleges, and this is part of the academic fit. The final piece of fit that we'll talk about before we get into the components of an application is the financial fit. Now, it's kind of Freudian that I left this to the final piece of fit, because oftentimes many of you are going to leave this as the final component of fit that you discuss. But I'm going to ask you to slide this a little bit further up. Why? Because many families don't talk about finances until it is too late. Yep. So what if my family and I We hop in a time machine, we go back in time, and we're at the very beginning of Jeremy Branch's college search journey. I in no way, shape, or form want to relive this, but let's just say for your benefit, I relive this. And I go back in time and I build this list that it's perfect social wise, right? They've got all my clubs and organizations, perfect size, awesome. It's a great academic fit for me, wonderful. But let's say we don't talk about finances. And I wind up choosing a university that's about $40,000 a year. I applied late, so I didn't hit a lot of those merit scholarship deadlines, right? And so I'm going to be on the hook for a lot of that cost. So although I found a school that was the perfect social fit for me, it's perfect academic fit, has my major, but it's not the right financial fit. If we don't think about that, maybe I can't matriculate or continue on at that university, not because I'm not smart enough, but because I don't have the financial means to do so, right? This is a conversation that you and your family needs to have as soon as possible. Because I'll tell you, when I was 16, 17, this was all monopoly money to me. When I looked at a school that was $20,000 to $60,000 a year, I was like, whatever. Right. You take out loans, don't you, Dad? And my dad's like, Jeremy, no. Let's sit down and talk about what these ramifications are. I met a father a couple of years ago at one of the high schools that I visit, and he said an interesting thing. He said, this is what I'm doing with my son to help him understand what this commitment is. He said, I helped him to understand it in car terminology because his son loved cars. And he said, this is like buying a brand new car every single year for 4 straight years. That's the type of financial commitment you're making when it comes to college. So you see why you and your family needs to have this conversation early? Because for some of us, I was like, yeah, I'll go to a $60,000 a year school. And I wasn't even for a moment thinking about scholarships and all that type of stuff. And then we had to dial it back. Fortunately for me, I also had an older sister who graduated from college before I even started my search. So she was also able to get through to me a little bit to think about costs in a much broader way. This doesn't mean that you allow sticker shock to completely, change your outlook on some institutions. As Grace mentioned, scholarships are a real thing. There are students who will attend some universities at a cheaper cost than Penn State because of the grant and aid and things of that nature, right? You just have to know what you're looking for and utilize financial aid offices as soon as possible. Another key aspect of finding the right fit and adding that to your college search journey is actually utilizing your Unionville counselors. Now, I'm going to tell you something, and I've said it already before. They are some of the best counselors that I work with. And my particular territory for Penn State is pretty interesting. It has some of the best schools in the state of Pennsylvania. And I have a smidge of Delaware and some of the best in Delaware. Many of these are ranked schools, not only locally, but nationally. Your counselors, I would put up against any other office. They are that good. They stay current. A lot of the professional development that my organization, PACAC, puts on, your counselors are attending those events. They're taking advantage of this professional development. I see them at conferences all the time over the summer, right? They put in effort, even when they're not technically on the clock, to make sure that they're giving you the most recent information and advice when they counsel you. Count them in on your college decision-making. Trust me, they don't get a Grace to come to a program like this or a Jeremy to come to a program like this if they, number one, don't have relationships with us already, but number two, don't have our mutual respect, okay? They know what they're doing. Factor them in to your college search. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of the college application. There are so many rumors that swirl around in terms of what really goes on when we're in these admissions committee meetings, right? They say, well, I know Lafayette didn't admit me because I have brown eyes, right? There's just these weird things that go along. I remember one time visiting Unionville. This is a number of years ago. And this kid comes up to me after my high school visit. And he goes, now, Mr. Branch. I said, yeah, what's up, buddy? He says, now I heard something about Penn State. I got to ask you. I said, okay, go ahead. He says, I heard you don't admit freshmen. Let's think about that, ladies and gentlemen. Penn State doesn't admit freshmen. Where did he get this information? Right? Last year, This one university, Penn State, admitted over 50, or had starting as freshmen, more than admitted, right? But had starting as freshmen for the fall, over 15,000 students. If we did not admit freshmen, we would die as an institution. Okay. We admit freshmen. But what happens is, have you ever played Whisper Down the Lane? Right. And you have the one kid who starts out and he says, I heard that Penn State is competitive. Right. But as it gets to the 20th kid, Penn State doesn't admit freshmen. Right. How in the world did we get there? Right. So I'm going to roll back the curtain. Okay. And I'm going to let you understand how we really look at these different components. What matters, what maybe doesn't matter as much. Okay. Are you ready? Now we're going to break this down into primary factors in admission, secondary factors, and tertiary factors, which is just a really fancy way of saying third. Okay. So what are the primary factors in admission? What are the first things you think Grace looks at or Jeremy looks at? Well, if you're thinking about your grades, you're right. If you're thinking about your transcript as a whole, absolutely right. We want to look at your class performance. We take a look at what level of classes that you took. Did you challenge yourself over these years? Now, please understand too, we understand that challenge means different things to different students. I meet some students that challenging themselves meant maxing out all the APs that they could throughout their time at Unionville. But for another student, it was taking 2 APs during their junior year. Or for another student, it's going from honors to AP for their senior year. Like they finally worked up that confidence to do it, right? This looks like different things for different students, and understand that we read students in context of that, okay? We're not penalizing you. This is not a keeping up of the Joneses type of thing that you need to do here. Consider your own personal journey, your own personal skills, your academic potential, and then weigh what you're going to take according to that. We also will factor in things like your test scores, if you have them. How many of you are worried about testing? I know you heard a lot and read a lot about this in the last year, as the current seniors had to walk into the great unknown. What they walked into this fall has never been seen in college admissions history. Now, there are a number of colleges and universities that have always been test optional, or at least it feels that way. Maybe they've been doing test optional admission for 10 years, 20 years plus, right? But there are other schools like Penn State where we were the new kids on the block. We said, oh my goodness, what do we do without test scores? But here's the thing. We didn't roll into this school year having thought about this for the first time September 1. See, the pandemic started and we started to shut down really in March of 2020, right? March 14th. It's kind of a date a lot of us have circled on the calendar.
Yep.
At Penn State, we started talking about test optional in April of 2020. Now, did that mean we had a crystal ball and we knew that COVID and its impacts would still be going on this deep in the year? No, we didn't know that. But what we did know is that some students were starting to miss their testing dates. So we started to have conversations. Wait a minute, we've flirted with this for quite a while. But if we have to do it, what does that look like? And we're not the only school that did this, right? A number of colleges and universities, Carnegie Mellon is one, we had to wrap our heads around this for the first time, right? So what we now have are procedures in place for admissions counselors like me to review students with or without those scores. Now, if you elect to sit for the SAT or the ACT next year, that is fine. But some of you know already, I hate testing. I'm not a good test taker, and I'm not going to sit for them. And that's your call as well. But know that a lot of colleges and universities, test optional is going to be a thing, not just for this year, but for quite some time. In fact, we at Penn State have made the call a couple of weeks ago that we're going to be test optional through 2023. Okay. So this is not just something that we tried out just for this year and then we're going to revert. We like what we're seeing a little bit. It's given some students opportunities for admission to Penn State that wouldn't ordinarily have been able to be admitted. And they're great kids, but they just weren't test takers, right? And then we had students who elected to sit for exams, and you're able to submit those to Penn State too. But just know that depending on your school, that will be your option. And that's a pretty cool thing as far as I'm concerned. One of the things that I found that it's done is it's caused many of us throughout college admission to focus more on the things that actually matter. how you performed in your Unionville classes, right? And that's the best indicator of what type of student you're going to be at Penn State and Lafayette and St. Joe's and all of the schools down the road, right? Because how you go to class, your attendance, right? How you perform on those tests, your homework, your participation, all of those things that you're going to still have to do on our college campus are things that we take a lot of time evaluating. So keep that in mind. Now let's talk about the secondary factors. Essays, demonstrated interest, recommendations, extracurricular activities. Now, when it comes to extracurricular activities, did you notice they're not in the primary factors? A lot of times when I ask students, what do you think we really look at? They'll go, oh, my grades and my extracurriculars. Well, your extracurriculars, we care about them. We want to know, what do you do when the bell rings at 2:30 at Unionville? Do you rush home and you're just streaming Netflix, or you're trying to learn the latest TikTok dance? Or are you giving back to your community in some way? Do you work? Do you volunteer? Are you a part of a club or sports team? We just want to know what makes you tick, what gets you up in the morning, right? Now, some students will come to me and they'll say, you know, Jeremy, I'm really interested in your school. And I say, that's great. And they say, I've been in about 30 different clubs at Unionville. And I'm like, that's unbelievable. How do you find the time? They're like, I don't know. Now, I have a 1.89, but I promise that is not indicative of the type of student I am. Maybe you should have dropped a couple of those clubs and hit the books a little bit more, right? Because all the extracurriculars in the world do not mask a subpar high school academic performance. Your extracurriculars need to be the icing on your cake, not the cake itself. Have you ever had somebody make you a cake that had way too much icing on it? It destroys everything else. I don't care how well baked the cake is. If it's too sweet, right, or too much icing, you don't want anything to do with it past a certain bite, right? But the perfect cake, the perfect baked goods, they have that balance, right? And that's what we're looking for in our prospective students. So extracurriculars matter, but they're just not the foremost thing that we look at. When it comes to essays and letters of recommendation, this is another area where I have a lot of students pull me aside and they ask me, do they really matter? Do you read them? Yeah, we do. There are a few portions of your college application that allow you to help us understand who you are outside of numbers. Your essay is one of those areas. Your letters of recommendation are one of those areas, and your activity section is one of those areas, right? Do not mail in your essay. Spend time on it. Many colleges and universities let you know what their essay prompts are going to be months in advance of the application, right? We start letting you know in June or July, this is what the topic is. So you have time to chew on it a little bit, right? And I'm sure Grace will tell you this, and every other college admissions counselor you work with, you can tell when a student spent time on that essay. You can tell because their personality starts to shine through. One of my duties that I've had for a long time and had to pass it up the last couple of years because of my presidential role with PACAC, but I was a reader for our Schreier Honors College at Penn State, which is considered an Ivy League level education at a public school, right? And so as a part of that, we have 3 additional essays and prompts and all this type of stuff. And there were days where I'd be on my couch reading essays and I'm giggling to myself. And my wife's wondering, what are you reading, right? And it's a student's essay. Now, how does that happen? Where a student I've never met before has somebody that they've never met before laughing on their couch in the middle of the week. Well, that student took time. They thought about the question. They were authentic in their response. And so their personality started to shine through. Amazing. But that usually will happen when you have some fun with it. You enjoy it. You take your time. So I encourage you to do this. When you submit your essay, this is not an English paper. Please understand that. Okay. I know you're going to work on them in English class, and that's a great use of time to get you used to writing and using different prose and all of that. That's wonderful. But we want to know who you are. We want to know why you did things, not what you did, but why you did, not what you read, but why did you read it? Not what you think, but why do you feel that way? That comes through in the essay. So spend time in writing them. Grace spoke about demonstrated interest, so I'm not going to repeat anything she said there. She hit the nail on the head. Excellent breakdown of demonstrated interest, but know which colleges use that and which universities do not. Now, I'm going to tell you something about admissions as a whole. This is still a human relations business. I had a student at the Shipley School a couple of weeks ago. I did a program there. And she hung on the Zoom a little late, and she said, I got to ask you guys a question. We were like, yeah, what's up? She said, okay, so I'm hearing everything you're talking about the college application journey, and I absorbed a lot of it. But how do you get to really know me if you've never met me? Right. And she said, I heard and read in one report that it takes a college admissions counselor 15 to 20 minutes to read a college application and move on. And she says, I don't feel like that's adequate time to get to know me. And I said, well, how about we do this? How about the fact that the time I read your application should not be the first time I've met you? You know who your official college reps are for each of these universities. If you don't know your college counselors, they know that, right? They know that Penn State is Jeremy Branch. They know that, right? So start to do that outreach earlier. If I had to do this all over again, remember, I've hopped in the time machine, I'm reliving it. The first time these people hear from me will not be when they receive my application. I will be at their high school visit, whether it be in person or virtual. I will be at one of their programs online through their own university, and I will introduce myself that way. I will introduce myself through email correspondence or phone calls. Okay, so keep that in mind. The tertiary factors are things like interviews, which Grace talked about as well. Make sure if you're going to do an interview, though, you're prepared for it. Practice, right? Have somebody in your life ask you questions. It's funny, in all the years that I've done interviews, you know what question trips students up the most? Tell me a little bit about yourself. You know how many times I have students stutter over themselves with that question? Because they've never thought about that and how they would answer it. They've thought about what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses? And if I was a color, what would I be? You think about all that stuff. But hey, you know what? As we start out, tell me a little bit about yourself. I have students. I have a dog. And it's like, dude, are you serious? That's all you have to share. So think about those things. Who are you? What gets you up in the morning? What are your passions? What are your interests? Right? And share those things with us. Now I want to spend a little bit of time before we hand the program over. And I want to talk to you about the student's role versus the parent's role. Because these lines get muddled with the college application journey. And there's a family that I'm working with right now in my email inbox that is driving me crazy because they don't understand the difference between what the student's supposed to be doing and the parent. And I'm going to give you an idea. So students, who do you think should be driving your college search journey? Should it be you or should it be your parents? Parents. Should it be you or should it be your student? Now, I know I can't see you or hear you, but I know what you're saying. You're saying, Jeremy, I know it's a student-driven process. Yeah, you know that academically, but do you believe it? Do you agree with it? Because many parents, I know you look at that child, it's probably sitting next to you right now at your laptop, and you look at them and you say, can I entrust this mega decision to this kid who doesn't even make his bed every day? Am I really about to do this? Right? I know you, okay? I know that you know it, but you may not agree with it, but it needs to be, because guess what? The student's the person that Grace and I are admitting. They're the ones that we want to get to know. They're the ones that's going to be walking our campus in a few years. They're the one that we're going to brag about on our brochures. When we print up new brochures in 4 years, a picture of your son or daughter is going to be smack dab in there, right? We're going to be bragging about all the things that they've done. But it's also important that your student love where they go. We at colleges and universities, we spend a lot of time studying what led to success for some students over other students. And we don't have the golden bullet or the silver bullet. We don't have that exact answer. But one of the things we found is that student success a lot of times starts with comfortability. Because when your son or daughter likes where they go, they wake up in a good mood. When they wake up in a good mood, they go to class in a good mood. When you go to class in a good mood, you retain information better. When you retain information better, you perform better in your classes. When you perform better in your classes, your GPA rises. When your GPA rises, your internship and job opportunities increase. But look where we started. What was the foundation of that? Comfortability. That's another reason why your student needs to take the wheel. But that doesn't mean they go it alone. Students, I need you to do the day-to-day stuff. the emailing when you have questions, the setting up the college visitation, whether virtual or in person. Can you take the lead on that? I have a father right now that emails me about 3 times a day about his son's application. And you know why that burns me up? If your son is so interested in my institution, why am I not hearing from him? If he wants to know why a certain decision was rendered and he wants to advocate that he really should be admitted to Penn State, why have I not heard from him? It's disingenuous. My son really wants to go to your school. My daughter, it doesn't, I don't buy it because I haven't heard a word from them. Okay. Students, you should be taking the lead on those things. But parents, that doesn't mean you don't have any role. I need you to be my big picture thinkers, parents. This is something my parents did an excellent job of. Help us to remember what the deadlines are. And I should have put deadlines along those primary factors for college admission. Because see, if you don't meet deadlines, you're automatically hurting yourself and your chances to be admitted to school. I'm dealing with about 15 cases of this right now, where a student would have been admitted early action to Penn State, but they procrastinated, fell into our rolling decision pool, and are no longer admissible because our criteria has jumped, right? Most of our incoming class has already been accounted for, right? So deadlines are an important thing. And my mom would keep a file with all of the schools that I'm applying to, with the deadlines written on the outside of those folders. A huge help with helping me stay on top of things. Encourage your sons and daughters to take the lead. It's one thing to tell them, hey, you should be calling this school. Have you called the school? But encourage them to do it. Hey, just make a call and you don't have to think about it for the rest of the day, right? Support them with that positive reinforcement. Talk to your children, not just about majors, but talk to them about careers. A lot of your children have no idea what it is you do. I talk to students all the time. Hey, you've applied for business. Do any of your parents work in business? I don't know. My mom, she looks really nice when she goes out the door. My dad, he throws on his Patagonia and then I see him at 6:30, right? That's great. But what does he do? What is their job? So many students have no idea. Talk to them about what it is that you do and manage their expectations. There's a lot of emotions that go on this time of year. Your son or daughter is not going to be admitted to every school they apply to. They may not hear back 2 seconds after they submit an email question to me, right? But help them understand, well, Mr. Branch will get back to you. He's probably got all other students he's talking to right now. Or, you know what? They said no, but who said yes, right? Because one of the things I've seen at competitive high schools like Unionville, some students just can't get beyond the schools that said no. Move on, forget them. Focus on the ones that said yes, because those schools that said yes did not arrive at that conclusion lightly. They read your application, they read your rec letters, and they said, you know what? I believe in this student. I see them here and I'm going to admit them. Focus on that. Are there any questions, Bob, from the chat? Anything that I could provide some insight
Jeremy,
on?
yeah. Hey, Jeremy, thank you. Right. Grace earlier, thank you. Right. Both knocking it out of the park here for us. I really appreciate it. Yeah, Jeremy, one of the questions we tend to get in our counseling department, the first question I'll fire Jeremy here, Grace. We have a lot of students apply to Penn State, and then I'll kind of include you maybe on the second one to join here and speak with us. And then I'll introduce Rachel here in a little bit. And also, I guess I should pause here about a little more than the halfway point, just to let everyone know that may have joined a little bit late here. This is recorded. The session will be recorded. We will post it on our Counseling Center website. There's a Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen where you can enter questions for our different reps that are on the webinar tonight for us. We'll be able to get to some of those questions. Jeremy, one of the questions we tend to find in the counseling department, it's a little bit unique to some of the bigger schools, as you mentioned, but in particular, Penn State. If you could speak a little bit about the branch campuses and what that looks like and the applications portion for that. I find more and more of our students applying and trying to ask and trying to navigate that portion of things, more and more each year. So if you could speak to that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'd love to, because it's one of my favorite aspects of our university, to be quite honest with you, Bob. Penn State is unique in that it doesn't have one campus. We have 20 throughout the state of Pennsylvania. And a lot of times parents and students are like, Jeremy, dude, why so many? And we're not the only school that has a multi-campus system, right? You'll see it also within other Big Ten schools. You know, the University of Indiana has a multi-campus system. But one of the reasons we have so many was to achieve our landmark kind of focus as an institution when we were created. We wanted to be affordable and accessible to every resident of Pennsylvania. And we realized by having one campus smack dab in the middle of the state, you're not accomplishing that. Right? Because we all know State College is still in modern days 5 hours away from some families. But imagine it's the 1950s and you're in that old Ford that's just, you know, trying to make its way up the mountains. Right. And it's you're maxing out at 40 miles an hour. It's an even longer trek for some families at that point in time. So what we started to do was to build other campuses throughout the state to be more accessible to everybody in the state of Pennsylvania. They have some key differences and key similarities, right?
Yep.
Their key differences are size and location. If you're looking to be a part of a really large college environment, then you start with the campus that's right behind me, University Park. Right now, there are 46,000 students enrolled at that one campus, right? But other students, as you mentioned, Bob, they're saying, you know what? I really like being one of 20, one of 25 students in my classes. I really like asking questions and getting to know my teachers and things of that nature. That's where smaller Penn State campuses come into play. I personally, when I was going through my college search, I didn't originally apply to Penn State. I had no interest in going to Penn State, right? But it was once I discovered the campus system that I said, wait a minute, let me think about this. Because I wanted a school that was internationally known and recognized, had an unbelievable sense of pride, but also dealt in outcomes. And that's really Penn State. And I said, well, being one of 46,000 students, I don't know. My parents then said, why don't you take a look at the Brandywine campus, which is actually the closest campus to Unionville. That's where I studied for all 4 years. So for some students, because of that size thing is the reason they like it. For a lot of families, because of affordability. Listen, you're going to save $30,000 if you commute for just 2 years to your closest Penn State campus. Wow. So a lot of students like it because of that as well. The one core thing that all campuses share in common is the same education though. My diploma from Penn State says the Pennsylvania State University across the top, has my name and major in the middle, signed by the president at the bottom. Doesn't say what campus I went to anywhere on it. So, you know, when you're trying to figure out which Penn State campus you want to go to, make it more about the size and location that you're looking for.
All right, great. Yeah, thank you. Grace, I'm going to kind of fire this one your way a little bit, if you don't mind here. A little bit off topic from your presentation from the, the college visit portion of things. But, you know, we get some questions. We have some questions in the chat, and Jeremy, feel free to chime in after Grace too. The differences in the application portion of things for weighted or unweighted GPA, if you come across that at all, if you want to kind of just clue everyone in on what that looks like and fill us in here, please. Thanks, Grace.
Yeah, certainly. And honestly, you know, Jeremy really covered it so well, and you know, especially talking about those primary factors, and that's going to be where GPA fits in. But keep in mind that some schools, you know, may actually even recalculate your GPA completely, and Lafayette's actually one of those. So,
Okay.
you know, for us at least, we kind of look at it a little bit differently, partially because we understand that every single school weights differently. You know, if a school's got a weighted GPA, or some schools don't even give us a GPA at all, but you know, if schools have a GPA, I've seen a 4-point scale, I've seen a 5-point scale, I've seen an 8-point scale, I've seen schools that don't actually use normal letters, they use H and HH and S and R, and I'm just like, I don't know what that means, but okay. And I'm going to figure it out, and then we're going to go from there. And so, you know, there's so much out there. And I think, you know, when it really boils down to it, your GPA is trying to give us a sense of, you know, how's your achievement in high school. And when Jeremy talks about that, you know, finding that academic fit and how important that is, right? That's my first job, you know, making sure that we are a fit for you as an applicant, and that you're going to be able to thrive on our campus. And so for us, the easiest way to do that is actually to take weighting kind of out of our view for a moment. Look at your GPA just in classes, in kind of your academic classes. So for example, I was a band kid in high school. We don't count band classes. So all those A's that I got in band for practicing did not end up mattering.
Sure.
And, okay, that's fine. I'll deal with it. We're not going to count the grade that you got in gym either, which that one was actually good for me because sometimes I didn't want to change. So, it's pros and cons.
Appreciate your honesty there, Grace.
No. But I'm really showing my colors and kind of the who I was in high school. But we're going to focus in on how did you do, and what kind of courses did you take? Weighted courses in English, history, social studies courses, math courses, science courses, and foreign language courses, and think about those as your kind of top or your 5 core courses, and also when you go about scheduling, if you're going to maybe not do 4 years of a language, replace it with something else. We do want to see that students are finding the things that they're interested in. But I guess that's, when we talk about GPA, I apologize if I've taken this farther than
No, please.
you wanted me to, but it's so part of a bigger story that I don't think about GPA on its own, I suppose.
Okay. All right, great. Jeremy, we actually had another question come in, and Grace, feel free to field this one also, because it may look different for both of you, being such different universities between Lafayette and Penn State. The difference, with an in-state or out-of-state applicant and what that may look like, for your admissions portion of things. If either or both of you can kind of tackle that one for us.
Yeah, so, from a Penn State perspective, in-state students have a big benefit, and one of it is the tuition's less, right? Because we are a state-related institution. We're not state-owned and operated like the Apache schools, which is another topic that'll be covered in one of the future Unionville programs, but we are state affiliated. So that means that about 3% of our budget comes from taxpayer dollars, comes from the state. So because of that, we're always going to have certain benefits that lean Pennsylvania more so than other things. Does that mean we don't admit out of students? No, it doesn't mean that. We definitely review out-of-state students and everything, but because of the tuition difference, that's one of the reasons where every single year we're going to be more Pennsylvania heavy than anything else. It also is really cool too, because in Pennsylvania, unlike any other state, we have like a real understanding of your school at a deep level. Like Bob and Colleen and Laura will tell you, in normal days, I'm at Unionville, once a month, right? Like I know the school, I know the teachers, I know the administrators. I've been a part of your counseling advisory group for 5 years or something like that, right? So we really know Pennsylvania. We really know those schools in and out, and that's really great. We have such strong relationships with the schools throughout Pennsylvania as well. So we do look at in-state and out-of-state students in slightly different ways, but Pennsylvania students always kind of have the leg up.
Yeah, I guess for us it's a little bit different since we probably between Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York, that's about half of our students, but we've got about 40 states and then another 45 countries or so represented. We're about 10% to 11% international. So it's a little bit different for us, just in terms of where our students are coming from and just the breakdown of that, since we're a private institution. So our tuition is the same whether you live here in Pennsylvania or whether or for students who do not. So there, I think for us, I think I wouldn't really think about it for us in terms of making yourself stand out amongst other Pennsylvania applicants, since let's face it, there's like 10 different people in my office who read Pennsylvania. So, it's not like you're being compared to every other kid from PA. Like that would be really impossible. There's like 1,000 to apply. So, it's really quite different in terms of just let us get to know you. Jeremy already went through, there's a lot of ways to really allow us to get to know you through your application. So think more about that, I think. And I know it's hard to kind of separate this and not think about this process as comparing yourself to other students. But really, you're going to do the best if you think about who you are and what makes you a little bit, or just what makes you you, and then bring that forward and present that to us.
All right, great. Well, thank you both. So Grace and Jeremy, you're welcome to stick around for us here, and I appreciate you contributing. We'll continue with the same format. We have random questions coming into the question and answer as we have different college reps presenting here. But I'm going to kick off things here towards the end of our presentation with introducing Rachel. So Rachel Schlachterwright from University of Virginia. I don't want to give away too much here. I'll let you speak a little bit, give your own little bio. And Rachel, for those of you that may have joined a little bit late, Rachel, no pressure. We have a pretty involved community here. I think at certain points we have over 200 participants watching just for the sake of our night. So just know that, we definitely have a lot of interest in the different presentation sessions tonight. But basically, those of you that may come in a little bit late here, our last presentation is going to be on the highly selective college application process and admissions. Rachel will cover that. Continue to please ask questions in the Q&A as they come in towards the very end here. Again, Grace and Jeremy are welcome to stick around, but Rachel, I know we'll have some questions for you. And then towards the end here, if your question was not answered, we'll start to field them at the end. And again, for those of you who are coming in late again, this will be recorded. For those of you in attendance, also we are sending out a feedback form to gather some feedback about the process here and see what we could do to kind of adjust things and move things forward for our next 2 sessions that we'll also be covering in the near future. Okay, so Rachel, you can take it away, and thank you again. We're very excited to have you, Rachel.
Thanks so much for having me. I will say it's kind of nice to do Zoom, even though we've been doing this for so long and it's so much in the fall, and now just like reading applications, it's like, wait, there are different people on my screen that I get to talk to. Like, this is new, this is fun. I'm dressed up, like this is a good Wednesday.
Sure.
So thanks for having me. My name is Rachel Schlachter. I'm a senior admission counselor here at the University of Virginia. So hello from Charlottesville. I don't know if you guys had much snow. I don't know if you had a snow day or two. We had a few inches down here, which it's already melted, honestly, but like schools were closed. They had a snow carving competition because like it
Sure.
rarely like measurably snows here. I've been here for 4 years, and this is like the second time. And I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Wisconsin, so people are like,
Okay.
this nothing.
So you're aware. Yeah, no, we were buried for a few days up here, so it's still kind of the aftermath even now. Getting cars out still. So.
Yeah, that's the nice thing not having to leave my apartment. Like, I've just watched the snow like melt off my car for the past year. My family back home, there's like 2 solid feet of snow in Wisconsin. So good and bad. So I hope you guys have been having a good week. I was asked to speak about highly selective admission. UVA is a more selective institution. I have my notes up on my second screen, so if I'm like looking there and there, it's because I want to make sure that I don't get too off topic. Honestly, selective admission, it's not too much different than just college admission in general. There are some things that we're going to be looking for from applicants. There are some, different criteria that we're looking for in terms of who we admit specifically at UVA, and then also kind of just cross-culturally at some of the peer institutions that we work with. I myself, we travel in our office, now with like Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Wellesley, and we're all kind of in that same group of looking for really academically motivated students, and then kind of filling in from there once you move on from the transcript. So really, it's a holistic approach, and you probably heard that word 1,000 times because it's a great way to describe college admission. And it's probably the way that, the best way to look at a student, because you're not just a GPA or a transcript, you are a real person on the other side of this. And that's really what we want to capture. So when we look at academics, it's really kind of like the core top of the iceberg, and then everything kind of fills in around that. So obviously the review is going to be most importantly forming around academics, but everything else is going to play a level of importance, really getting to know you, who you are, what you might bring to our campus. We use the word grounds here because, I don't know, it's a Thomas Jefferson word from like 200 years ago.
Sure.
So if I say grounds, that's just because I'm like programmed to do that, but that's what campus means here. And really kind of seeing who these students are going to be and what they might, offer at the university. So academically motivated, looking at you in the context of your high school. So we pull up your high school's profile. It gives us a rundown of all the classes available to you, as they were speaking about as I popped in, GPA scale, grading scale, how things are weighted. So you can really kind of get to know what was offered to you, how you were graded, and then kind of see what you took advantage of as a student. So we're looking for academically motivated students in context. So Unionville, AP classes, that's your program there. And I know that you guys offer like 20 plus AP classes. We are not expecting our applicants to complete 20 plus APs. That's just ridiculously out of the water. Like that, I don't think any of our applicants would hit that number because it's just easy. But we are expecting students to consistently challenge themselves. So when those AP courses become available to you, are you taking advantage of them? Are you staying strong in the 5 core areas? So English, math, science, humanities, foreign language. I want to give a plug for foreign language because a lot of students tend to drop that. Hurts my heart a little bit. I minored in Spanish in college. You'll study abroad. It'll be great. You'll love it. Definitely stay strong in foreign language, 3-4 years if you're kind of maxing out on that AP level. We see a lot of students who might start their high school foreign language in middle school and then kind of advance through those levels. That's what we would like to see. Again, we're always looking at you in the context of your high school and not comparing you to other Pennsylvania residents or for us Virginia residents or anyone else. It's unfair. It's not the way we review. We look at you, want to see where you're coming from. We also might look at things a little bit differently in terms of interest of where you are applying in terms of the different schools and colleges. So for example, engineering students, we want to see that high level calculus, physics classes, hopefully by junior or senior year. Arts and sciences students might have a little bit of a different profile. Students looking to maybe go into nursing, we do want to say, strong math and science courses as well. So make sure that as you're starting to think about what you would like to do, that you're really forming your schedule around those different areas. We had a lot of questions about testing, especially this year. Schools are adopting test optional policies. There's actually selective institutions that have been doing this for years, like maybe 15 years. There are some selective schools. So it's definitely a trend that's up and coming, which, by the way, we love to see. I don't think any admission counselor ever would be like, the first thing we look at is test scores. It's not the end all be all. Take advantage of test optional. UVA just this past week, we extended our test optional policy for the next 2 application cycles. So fall 2022, 2023, which seems like so far into the future, but that's something you can take off your plate and not stress about. Honestly, maybe naively, when we were like, oh, we're going to go test optional because that just seems, like the way to go, then we still got calls from students saying like, I'm going to fly to Texas and take my SAT. And I'm like, whoa, like crazy, but also like in the middle of a global pandemic, even like unsafe for your health.
Sure.
Just to give you some numbers, now that we have numbers to share, about 42% of our applicants for this admission cycle applied without testing. You're going to get the same exact review when it comes to UVA. I don't think any school would say like, oh, we're going to prefer testing at this point, especially because so many things have been canceled. So something to kind of take off your plate. Focus on the things that you can control and not the things that are obviously out of your control right now. The SAT also just announced that subject tests are going away. They're also removing the essay portion of that. So just questions that our office doesn't have to field so much anymore. We get a lot of questions, probably you guys might have them as well, about AP scores and if you get credit and should I apply with them. And it's really up to you. Some schools might ask to see them. For us, it's optional. But we're always going to refer back to that transcript because that's hours, years, months of work versus just, a couple hours for an AP exam where you could be, on your best game, or maybe you like ate something weird for breakfast, weren't feeling great, and then you suddenly didn't get a score that you super liked. So focusing on, that longer length of academics. In terms of kind of moving out of academics and testing, we do see a lot of our applicants who meet the criteria of what we're looking for in an offer. And there are too many. And unfortunately, we don't have the capacity for 10,000 undergraduate students. Our incoming class is about 3,750. And we just don't have the space for residence halls and class sizes and all of that. So where do we move from there? And then we move into the other pieces of the application, which all play kind of a different level of importance. There's no ranking system, but everything is definitely looked at and reviewed. Extracurriculars, we get so many questions about those. And this is probably the tagline for every admission counselor: do what you love what you do. Please do not feel like you need to be a part of something or doing something for our benefit. I want you to be doing things that you love and find value in. The lucky thing about UVA being a mid-sized institution, for some students, they're like, oh, UVA is a huge school, but it's nice to be in the company of a school like Penn State, because it's like, I myself went to a Big Ten university. Like, I know what a large school is. UVA, solidly mid-sized with like 17,000 undergrads. So there really is a place for everyone. We do think about fit a little bit, and you might see maybe smaller, more selective schools think about fit a little bit more intensely than we do. And that's also something for you to consider on the other side of this. Maybe you just think of, oh, this school is hard to get into. I'm just going to apply here because it might look nice if I get that offer letter. But maybe you're more of a city person and the school is maybe more rurally located and it's small, and you're looking for a larger school. Make sure that you're finding that fit on your side, and other schools are also looking for a fit on their side, especially schools that, might have a more, not refined, I can't think of the right word, but like a certain type of student that's going to thrive there. They just have maybe certain majors and different types of students that they're kind of looking for, where we're lucky on our end to be a larger university. So we're able to find places for really anyone, which is just a benefit of my job in working at a larger university. We also want to learn about you beyond the classroom and think about you as a roommate, as a leader on grounds, as someone who's going to be in the school community as well as the local community. So that's why we ask for those letters of recommendation. Make sure that you are giving your teachers time to write them, asking teachers who really know you, so they can tell us things beyond just listing out your resume activities and maybe one or two things that you've been involved in. We want to kind of hear about stories from the classroom to really see how you would attack academic life at the university, but also how you would be as a citizen of our university. Also, don't get too carried away with letters of recommendation. For example, we require 2, a counselor and a teacher, and I think a lot of students see that as like a baseline. They're like, well, I'll submit 14 and then I'm sure to get an offer admission. Please don't think that way. Our office record is 37 letters of recommendation for one applicant. Grace, you're making the correct face. Please try to break that record. Things just get a little bit kind of jumbled, that many letters in. So don't think that more is more is more. Follow directions. That's also just a great thing to come back to in general is we look at you as potential young adults. So we want to see, hey, we didn't ask for a resume. Did you send one anyway? Or are you kind of doing your own thing and not really following directions? That's kind of step number 1 that we see, like, oh, you're a person who can follow directions. It's always good. And then also essays. Essays, we could talk about them for hours, and I do in my essay workshops. This is really the point where we get to know you as a student, as an applicant. Passion and authenticity are my 2 biggest words. It's really not about a certain topic. I don't think any of us are admitting a student based on what they wrote about, but more about how they wrote, how they emoted through their essay, kind of how they formulated an argument, if they wanted to kind of talk about something that they liked or didn't like. Essays can kind of affirm a decision. So we might with your application, it's like, oh, looks like an offer, looks like an offer. We read a lovely essay and it's like, yep, we're gonna offer you admission. We also see it as kind of a helper for those borderline students where it's like, we're unsure about, what the decision might be. We get to an essay that maybe might really blow us out of the water. You made us laugh, made us cry, made us think. It can be something that definitely can help your application. It can also hurt your application. We want to see students who have taken the correct amount of time with their essays. College essays should not be something that you're up until like 3 in the morning losing sleep over, like way too much. You also don't probably want to just spend 15 minutes on your essay one Saturday, give it a once over, hit submit on your application. Give it some rounds of review, ask others to review it, because we do get to a point, especially for us out of state, getting into that in a second, our out-of-state review is more competitive than our Virginia review as a public university. So we're really looking for students who are kind of firing on all cylinders in all parts of their application. And there are points where we get to the essays and we see that maybe not a lot of time was taken and it's not kind of, hitting the level that we would like to see. And then that might change our decision as we kind of think about the applicant pool that we have. And we're very lucky that we have a lot of talented students in our pool. Also touching on some things that are probably covered before I got here, but taking into account public university versus private universities. So for example, UVA, we have to be 2/3 Virginian in our incoming class. That's our agreement with the Commonwealth. So our in-state offer rate or Virginian offer rate is higher, almost double than our non-Virginian out-of-state international offer rate. So something to consider. That's probably going to be different with a private university. And also I think it's important to know that, we are a state school and all state schools obviously have their different requirements of residency. So something to ask as you're going through websites or sitting through virtual information sessions. Also thinking about legacy, that's also a question that we get asked about a lot is legacy taken into account? For some schools, it may be a pretty kind of lifting factor in an application, and you might see that the legacy admit rate is going to be maybe higher than a non-legacy admit rate. So something to think about, to consider, probably not lose sleep over, but just I'm a firm believer in kind of like having all the knowledge that you could possibly can as you're moving into something, especially something like college application. So asking that question. And then moving into offer rates in terms of decision plans. So, maybe a school offers 2 decision plans, early action, regular decision, and maybe they do prefer those early applicants. It's easier to get in when you apply early. They're taking a large portion of their class early, and maybe they don't have as many spots as students who apply later. For us, we have 3 decision plans, early decision, early action, regular decision, but it's the same exact review process. We're not giving preference to any set of students. So it's another great question to ask and something that schools are normally pretty forthcoming about, just so that you can know as you get ready, hey, I better have everything set to go by like November 1st or October 15th for this school because I may have a significantly better chance at admission by applying early. And then my final piece is just ask us your questions, your counseling professionals and your administration professionals. It can be very easy to get lost on Reddit and blog posts and the advice everyone around you, and everyone's going to have ideas and comments and concerns for you, and they're pretty much all going to be valid, and it's coming from a place of goodness, we know, but there's a lot of rumors that swirl around. One that we get a lot is that we have quotas, which we don't, just 2/3, 1/3. We don't have like a certain number of Virginians that we can take, or Pennsylvania students or students from a certain high school or geographic area. So if you have questions, concerns, please reach out to your counseling staff and to us, because we are most likely going to be the ones with the most truth behind our answers. And it's also always fun to hear what the rumors are around each year, so you can kind of nip them in the bud. But that's pretty much all I have. It's not that different, just unfortunately a little bit more difficult in high active admission.
Sure. No. Yeah.
This is helpful.
Yeah, Rachel, that was fantastic, and thank you again for joining us tonight. We do have a couple of questions that Mike, like you said, the process is very similar, but may get geared a little bit differently towards highly selective. And I don't want you speaking on behalf of every highly selective school in the country, but some of these questions might pertain a little bit more to just that process, and if you can field some of that. You brought up earlier early decision, and if you could speak to the early decision process. I have a number of conversation with students, and it's a tricky road to go down, where students and parents get really caught up in, if you apply early decision and make that commitment, you have such a better chance of getting into that school. And kind of what Jeremy mentioned earlier, you really have to step back from the process and say, do you really want to go to that school, to make that kind of commitment, or are you just doing this for what you think is going to get you in for the numbers' sake? So if you can just speak to early decision a little bit here for our Unionville community, that'd be great.
Sure. So UVA is different in how we operate with early decision. It was added, this is our second year doing it. We used to have it like way back when. And it's there for students who know that UVA is their number one choice. They want everything kind of done and dusted by January 1st, and then you can enjoy the rest of your senior year. But we don't give preference to early decision applicants, which is not the normal conversation around early decision. So there are many schools that use early decision, selective or non-selectively, that it guarantees, kind of yield rate for us, which is like a super geeky admission term, but it guarantees that, hey, if we offer to 200 students, those 200 students are going to be here in the fall with us. So early decision, it is binding. You will sign a statement, your counselor will acknowledge the statement, I think your parents on the statement as well, that you are going to accept the offer of admission. If you are admitted, you're going to submit that deposit, enroll in the fall. So again, Bob, like you mentioned, I think there are some students who are like, oh, well, this is the best way to get in. They throw everything in, and then maybe they don't consider everything. I think for a lot of families, it's the financial commitment and, can you afford attendance at where you're deciding to go and locking yourself in? Luckily, there is a way to break early decision. That is by deeming that you are not financially able to make the commitment to the university, but it also then that information is shared with other universities that like, oh, you did break this early decision agreement. And, it's not something that's taken lightly. We, again, are treating you as young adults that, are hopefully putting some thought into your decisions. So it's great if you know that, hey, this is the number one choice. Like if they were to offer me admission, I have no problem saying yes. And I've done the homework to know that this is something that my family can feasibly do. What you don't want to do is just throw something because you think it's your best chance of being admitted and kind of having to fix things on the back end. We've seen it, twice now with students who are like, I didn't really think about this. And now I have all of these issues that are popping up. So definitely something to take into consideration. And then for us, we're very lucky that we have early action and regular decisions. We have 2 more decision plans. It's all the same review. You don't have to tell us yes or no until May 1st. You do have that time. So just be cautious with early decision.
Rachel, we have a couple more questions for you, but since we're on the topic, Mr. Branch, Jeremy, or Grace, if both of you can kind of speak to some of the deadlines and the different process for your different schools while we're on the subject, discussing early action, early decision. If you can cover that also, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, so Penn State, we have early action and rolling admission, which was our former like regular decision, but we just call it rolling admission. It really depends with us on what your overall goals are. So, for instance, if you're really thinking about our largest campus, University Park, right, which a lot of Unionville students love that campus, and that's their first choice campus. I highly recommend that you apply early action because most students are doing that anyway. And so by the time we get to the rolling admission portion of our applicant pool, most of those spots are accounted for. And so a lot of our majors, especially in the Smeal College of Business, certainly is the case with nursing and psychology, they're really at that point looking to fill in a few more spots in their incoming class, and then that's it. And so students who go up against rolling admissions criteria at University Park are really kind of behind the eight ball. So if you're thinking about that campus as your first choice campus, definitely do early action. Rolling decision is something that if you're thinking about a smaller campus and you're saying, hey, you know what, I need a little bit more time for, my application and get my thoughts together, get these recommendation letters, that rolling admissions is perfect for the smaller campuses. You can do early action that way as well, but that's kind of the breakdown. Our early action deadline is November 15th. That, in my opinion, is plenty of time to meet that deadline because our application becomes available in August. So if you start chipping away at that logistical piece of the application, the demographic piece, hey, this is who I am, this is what I want to study, this is who my parents are, get that out, get that done in August, right? And then those supplemental pieces get to us in September and October. You have plenty of time to meet that deadline.
Okay, great. And Grace, if you can touch on that, and Grace, if you don't mind, we do have a question in the chat. Just if you could just cover the basics. We might have covered it earlier in the conversation. Just what is early action exactly?
Sure. Unfortunately, I don't know if I'm the best person to answer exactly what early action is because that's actually the only route that we don't have at Lafayette.
My apologies.
That's okay. But I can certainly hopefully touch a little bit on how it might be different from early decision, which Rachel already mentioned is binding, whereas early action is not. And it is, I think, a great way to show your interest and to show that you're on the eight ball, like Jeremy said, and you've got your ducks in a row and you're ready to go. But it doesn't have that binding component. So for Lafayette, we have early decision and regular decision, and we do have 2 rounds of early decision, and that just means they have different deadlines, and it's kind of when you come to that decision for yourself. So our early decision deadline is November 15th. And again, that's for when you've decided that Lafayette is your absolute favorite place in the whole wide world, and you are definitely going to enroll if you get admitted. And that's the route to take there. We certainly do, see a difference in acceptance rate in our early decision and regular decision pools, but there are some caveats to that, given the fact that we're a school of only 2,500 students with 23 Division I athletic programs. So quite a few of those athletes will apply through the early decision rounds, or other hooks in other ways. So there's there's other factors that can kind of skew the numbers a little bit in early decision. Think of it this way. I know I mentioned demonstrated interest like way back. Early decision is the ultimate show of demonstrated interest. Like you were literally signing a piece of paper saying that we're your favorite place in the whole wide world. That says something, and that's kind of where I see the benefit, I think, for students going through that early decision round. I think Rachel said it too. We accept 200 students, and that's 200 students who are gonna be here, on our campus in the fall, and our job is to get students on campus in the fall. So, that's certainly helpful as well. Our early decision 2 round, the deadline is the same as our regular decision round, which is January 15th. And we even have an option where students, as long as they've applied by January 15th, if they're a regular decision and they decide in the window before February 1st, that actually Lafayette is your favorite place, then you can actually convert your application and just let us know and submit that early decision agreement after that. So, you know, again, and you know, Rachel already said it, the most important thing to think about with early decision is that you're saying that you're going to attend, and you should make sure that, you know, you've kind of got your ducks in a row in terms of, is it the academic fit, and then also is it the financial and social fit too, and that financial fit is really important. Some colleges may even be able to do, you know, a financial reader or give you a sense of what kind of scholarships or grants you might be able to get, even in early decision, and give you a sense of what that might look like. I really don't like to see the heartache that comes along when students aren't able to go through with that. So, you know, please get those questions answered ahead of time.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. So we're going to start to wrap things up. So I'm going to bounce around a little bit here at the very end. So Rachel, I'm going to head back over to you about the highly, you know, the highly selective conversation we were having. You know, you mentioned the SAT subject area tests, and I know you were, you know, discussing how they're maybe moving away from that in College Board for the future, but we have a number of students at Unionville that have completed them. And, you know, how does that work, you know, for your application, and do certain programs require them? I mean, I know we talked a little bit about test optional, but if you could speak to this SAT subject area test, not just the typical SAT conversation that we had earlier.
Yeah, so there are not many schools that require them at this point. And then after this year, they won't, because they will be something that is in the past. So it's just been something that has changed for so many years. For us, they were optional for as long as I've been here, which isn't super long. It's been 4 years, which meant, you know, if students had them, that's great. If you feel like the score, you know, kind of reflects who you are as a student, it only really help you. Same thing with like AP exams. Like you're like, oh, I got an A in physics and I got, you know, a 5 on this physics. Like, yeah, I'm proud of that. Like, I'm going to let you know about that. But you have the best day, and maybe you got, you know, not the best score on your AP exam, but you still got that A in AP physics. You know, that is something that we're going to care more about. So same with subject tests that you might submit. You know, that's just a couple hours on a Saturday, you know, versus the years of academic work on a transcript. So for those of you lingering students that might have them, I don't know how, I mean, because they're like completely gone, like they're refunding kids who were going to take them, like no more. Like if you have them, I think, you know, completely up to you on what you would like to do. I think a lot of schools are just going to say optional, or if they're highly recommended. We used to say that, and there was like, wink, wink, we want to see them. So really just ask a school about them. But because we're kind of leaving with them, they're not going to be super important anymore, which is great because we get so many questions about yeah.
Sure, thank you. And another question we tend to get, and Rachel, I have to be a little bit delicate asking you with your professional background you explained earlier. I have a lot of students at Unionville that really they kind of get stuck in the mindset of the how many foreign languages, and I definitely need 4, or I need 5, and if it's not on my high school transcript, but I did take it in middle school. You know, what does that look like, you know, for some of the highly selective? So if you could speak to that a little bit in a non-biased manner for us here with your background, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I think, you know, first of all, we just say to stay strong in the 5 core areas, just because, frankly, with our applicant pool, you know, our offers are going to be students who are strong in the 5 core areas. That's something that's going to be very common with our offer rate. Like, just to give you some numbers and not to scare you, but like, this is what's going to pop up on the website. You know, our offer rate for our non-Virginian students is hovering about 18%. So we're lucky to, you know, be able to select applicants who really are kind of, you know, firing on all cylinders. With foreign language, if you start it in middle school, most schools will have like a 7th, 8th grade year that lists them. If that's not on your transcript, but we see you started in like level 3 in your freshman year, we can safely assume that you took 4, or maybe you tested out for some reason.
Sure.
That's fine. Also, we understand that, you know, 7th grade you taking Spanish 1 might not turn out the best. And that can have a factor on GPA and class rank, and students kind of really freak out about that. But we understand that 7th grade you is a lot different than junior, senior you. So just stay strong in that. And if it's, 4 years by time you hit senior year, if it's an AP level by time you hit senior year, really it just goes back to, and we'll see this a lot in rec letters. So you're going to love this term of like love of learning and intellectual curiosity. You might not love all of the courses that you're in, and that's okay. Not every student kind of loves all their courses equally, but because of the competitiveness of the process and who we are specifically at UVA, is we're looking for students who they're not going to love the class, but they see the advantage in taking the class and kind of rounding themselves out. And the majority of our students are going into the College of Arts and Sciences, which has a language requirement as well. So we like to see that kind of area of your brain has been exercised for the past couple of years, and then you're able to maybe test out of your foreign language or maybe explore something new with us. So a couple different ways to look at it.
Great. So Rachel, we have, for the sake of time, we have one more question for you. And then the last question I'll kind of approach to the panel, Jeremy and Grace and Rachel here. Rachel, for the last question here, we Jeremy and Grace were able to cover a little bit about, tracking demonstrated interest. And I know you brought it up briefly there. When it comes to highly selective schools, I've had some reps come to my office and somewhat joke about it. It's to the point for some schools where they do not track demonstrated interest because they're getting phone calls 5 times a day from parents and some hopefully even from students at times. For UVA, can you speak to the demonstrated interest a little bit, or even speaking with some of your colleagues what that looks like from a highly selective standpoint?
Yeah, thank you for bringing up this question because we do not track demonstrated interest. And again, I brought up with early decision that we even don't prefer those applicants. It's just an application plan that students can use if they know that UVA is the #1 choice, but they're getting the same review regardless of when you apply. So we don't track demonstrated interest. I think it really does depend on institutions. The ones I'm thinking about, probably no, because again, we get phone calls and at one point, you get daily emails from parents and students. And, if you want to say good morning, that's super sweet and very kind and thoughtful, not necessary. It bogs down our inboxes just a little bit. We'll answer your questions. If you have questions, don't be afraid to email or call our office. We always have a dean on call. But yeah, for students, for schools that say they don't track interest, believe them and try not to inundate them with emails. For schools that do track interest, just take a look, make sure that what type of interest it is. It's probably not calling them, every single day in the morning. It's like, hey, we check to see if you've come to like an info session or seen us at a college fair or something like that. So just be a little delicate with that. But for us, no interest. So.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to throw this one out for the field here. I know each of you somewhat touched on it. And obviously the fact that I'm bringing it up as one of the last questions for tonight goes to show there's, as you all are seeing, there's still a level of anxiety. And to those out there in the participants to the webinar and the community, just know we're going to cover this in our next, is one of the topics in our next series, session 2 for the webinar. But if anybody or all of you, whomever, would like to field a question, a lot of students are getting stuck on that. They like the fact that they have the option to get to go test optional for reporting scores, but at the same time, it's bringing a certain level of anxiety, another level of anxiety, because now they don't know whether or not they should report it. Right? Years past, as Jeremy mentioned, if you were applying to Penn State, you were reporting your SAT scores or ACT scores, and that was the deal. And so it removes some of that anxiety behind it. Right now, it's almost it's if you're that student who just simply does not test well, that's great. But what if you're that student that's right there around a pretty good test taker for a particular school that you're applying to? What would your feedback be for the community on kind of walking that fine line of should I send my scores or not send my scores? And again, if any of you or all of you would like to field this one as the last question for the night, I'd appreciate it.
I would say, Bob, especially now that we have a little bit of data, right after this year's incoming class is over and done with, I say students should talk to their counselor, right?
Yep.
And, you know, I hate to put more on your plate
Yep.
to the Unionville counselors, but, you know, one of the things that I get asked about this all the time, Jeremy, this is my score, should I submit it? And to be honest with you, Penn State doesn't want me answering that question.
Yep.
And you may be thinking, okay, why not? Are you being secretive? Are you being difficult? No, because we know that some of you guys are a little crazy when you don't get in. And so what happens is you go, well, Mr. Branch told me to submit the scores, and that's what kept me out. And we don't want anything to do with that. Okay. And so one of the things that your counselor will be able to do is provide you with a little context based off of what they saw happen with some of their students this year. Right. And when you take a look at our averages, all of our colleges and universities publish averages on our website. And if you're looking at those averages and you're saying, hey, I'm not falling in those averages, that might be your sign right there. Right? Because like if you're below that middle 50% or that average that school points out there, then those scores are in no way, shape, or form going to help you with your admission to that institution, right? So you hope at that point, your curriculum, the level of classes you've taken, how you performed in those, in addition to the other supplements, will carry you through. So it just takes some conversation and being smart with, you know, what you're seeing, using the tools at your disposal and kind of making the best decision you can from there.
Great. Thank you. Rachel or Grace, anything? I think Jeremy kind of wrapped it up there. Anything else to add?
Yeah, I would just say, echoing what Jeremy said, I would love if you would not call the office and ask us your test scores and this is what should I do, because we're not going to answer those questions, because like Jeremy said, we're always going to be on the receiving end of some, you know, unhappy people if the decision doesn't go your way. But yeah, if you are, you know, falling into the, you know, average areas, that's great. If you feel like your testing is an accurate reflection of who you are as a student, that's great. If this is something that's keeping you up at night, maybe that's a good sign to say, hey, and like I mentioned before, 42% of our applicants, I'm so excited for when we're able to publish, like, this is how many students were test optional and received an offer of admission. And also, you know, at this time, just, you know, stay safe and healthy. That's what we're looking for, not for you to cross state lines and, you know, get a little crazy about testing. Frankly, if this was me as a senior, I'd be like, great, ACT, nope, see you later. Like, don't want to deal with that. So hopefully this can be something positive off your plate, not the inverse effect.
Sure. Okay, great. All right. Well, yeah, thank you, Grace. So Grace, Jeremy, Rachel, I can't begin to say how helpful this was for our community, and thank you for helping out our department and showing up tonight. I guess the last point that I'll just bring up to the community that I always touch on when we have these different webinars and seminars, and we get a chance to kind of get everybody in the same Zoom room at this point. You know, just to reiterate, you know, from conversations with a lot of our reps that we speak to at admissions, you know, a lot of our parents and our students in the Unionville community, you know, they tend to obsess over, we have to have every single piece of the application done before summer even starts, before I get into my senior year. And I try to reiterate to the community, and our counseling department does also. I mean, there's a select few schools that may open their portals in August. But the reality of the situation is, you know, I think that a lot of our families get really antsy over the summer, and, you know, just following the different admissions websites, they'll let you know what you can or cannot send in, and really the reality of timelines for them. You'll be able to see all of that information on the different admission websites for schools. You know, because we get a lot of families that are constantly emailing in the summertime thinking they have to have every little piece of everything in. That's not always the case for the majority of schools. So just kind of bringing that up too, anytime I have the opportunity to speak with college reps and speaking at these different events. So, but hey, listen, this is fantastic. Grace, Jeremy, Rachel, wonderful job. You know, you did an excellent job here. I really appreciate you taking the time. And thank you for helping out our community. Okay. For those of you that are still on, again, this is a recorded session, so we will be able to put that up on our Counseling Center website, and we'll also be following up with our feedback form for you to fill out at this point. I will now shamelessly plug the next one for our session 2, which will be coming up here on March 3rd. And some of the topics we're looking to cover on March 3rd here are some of the stuff we touched on a little bit tonight, maybe going a little bit more in depth, essay writing, essentially talking about a little bit more in depth on the testing options and what that looks like, and kind of financial aid and going from there. Okay, so all of that information is on our Counseling Center website for you to take a look into, and our detailed info about the next session. Okay, so Grace, Jeremy, Rachel, thank you again, and we really appreciate it. Thank you to all of you out there. Again, thank you, Justin Webb, for helping out with the technology portion of things, and thank you to all the counselors and the community for helping here to make this happen tonight. Okay.